So people in the film industry are using Adobe Premiere Pro to edit million-dollar films, and I'm just here using it to edit some whack-ass YouTube video. Hi guys, so today we're gonna answer the big question. Can we edit YouTube videos on iMovie? That was probably really cheesy, okay. So for my regular videos, I would use Adobe Premiere Pro, not because I'm bougie or anything, just because my school sponsors us Adobe software. If it's $50 a month, I'm gonna make as much use of it as possible. If not, I will be using iMovie. Thing is, I did edit on iMovie last time before I started my YouTube channel. So I'm slightly familiar with it, but today I'm gonna try to edit one of my YouTube videos with iMovie. And while I bring you guys through my editing process in iMovie, I'm also gonna teach you guys the different tools and tricks and all that fun stuff. So let's get started. And my hair is really a mess right now, so please just ignore it. The first step is to import your clips, and it's pretty easy to use. So you can just click import media or just drag and drop your media from elsewhere. But the first thing I noticed off the bat is that your imported media, you cannot organize them in folders. So for example, I was editing a vlog, so I couldn't separate the clips from day 1, day 2, day 3. And honestly, this wasn't that much of an issue because if I was shooting a vlog, it would be in chronological order. So if you sort by date created, it will still be in order and it's still relatively easy. But if you're shooting a different kind of video where it's not in chronological order and you have put them in folders, then you cannot bring your folders onto iMovie. This also includes your music and also special effects that you bring over to iMovie. They're just sometimes going to be scattered around, which can be a little difficult to find. Step number 2, I went on to do my rough cut, which is basically putting down the clips in order without any effects or whatever, so to basically get the structure of your video together. So for iMovie, you have to drag your whole clip into the timeline and cut out the parts you don't want. You can also use Shift R to select a portion of the clip and then drag it in so it won't be so long. You can drag your playhead to the part where you want to cut and you press Command B. What I would do is I would move my playhead to the end of a section and cut that, and then go to the start of the next section and then cut that and then delete the center portion, because iMovie would immediately help you remove all the spaces in between. Overall, I think cutting in iMovie is pretty straightforward and beginner friendly, just that I wasn't really used to it. Okay, so after the rough cut, I went on to adjust the speed because there were some portions where I had time lapse and it was really taking up a lot of space in the timeline. And adjusting the speed is really easy because all you have to do is right click and select speed editor. There will be a sliding tool on your clip, and you can either slide that tool to make it faster or slower, or you can go up to the top section and adjust it to the exact percentage you want. Okay, so let's go on and talk about the effects in iMovie. They have a whole section up at the top dedicated for the effects. The effects are mostly like filters and audio effects. And if you like the look of it on your video, I think you can add it. But for me, it personally didn't really match my editing style, so I didn't really touch much of the effects. So I imported some of the effects that I usually would use as overlays. One example is this one. And surprisingly, I could use it in iMovie. I downloaded the clip from YouTube, and when you drag it over the part where you want the effect to be, it will just be a green screen behind. But you go over to the top, the default setting will be cut away, and all you have to do is change it to green screen, and voila, it will just be the effects. And I think that's pretty good. Another effect I like to use is this VHS thingy. trying to be aesthetic. But for that, you just put it over and decrease the opacity a little bit and you should be good. Another effect you can do that's very popular on iMovie is Ken burns. And what that basically is just a fancy way of saying zooming into your face. So basically, if you go to the cropping section at the top, there will be like 3 options: crop to fit, and Ken burns. And when you click on Ken burns, there will be 2 rectangles on your frame, one for the start and one for your end, and all you have to do is just adjust the start and the end frame, which allows you to zoom in or zoom out. Also, there are only 2 video tracks to work with, and it's pretty limiting, but if your video is just really simple editing, I don't think that would be an issue. The next section I'm going to talk about is the most frustrating thing ever, and that is the text. Okay, so iMovie has certain like title templates where you can just put in, and they're just so cheesy. So I can't even put a text like that. It has to be like, I remember back in the day when I edit on iMovie, I used to be able to add a freeze frame on the title and make it a solid text. But apparently that doesn't exist anymore. I really didn't want to use the title templates, so I ended up just doing my titles somewhere else and importing them into iMovie. So for the handwritten titles and also the just normal text titles, I just did them in Photoshop and put them in. I'm sorry. I had to. Okay, but when I first added them into the timeline, they kept like zooming in even though I didn't do anything to them. And I realized that the default setting when you bring in photos is that they will add Ken burns, and you can easily remove that, which was a relief because right there I was really panicking that I was going to have zooming and dissolving texts.
I don't know why am I overreacting over this tiny issue.
And if you're importing text from elsewhere, sometimes you might do it on the software and you don't know where to place your text. Actually, if you go to iMovie, you can change the setting to picture-in-picture, and then you can move your text to anywhere on the screen. I know a lot of people wouldn't have Adobe Photoshop, so what I recommend is try to find a free software where you can do text and save them as PNG. If you really have no choice, just use the iMovie text. Yeah, adding the text was a nightmare. Next, I'm going to talk about one positive thing about iMovie, which is their voiceover function. And honestly, it was pretty easy to use. Just gotta click on the microphone button and record. Yeah, I have nothing much to say about this section. Next thing I'm gonna talk about is the color correction section. And in iMovie, you can only adjust the brightness, the temperature, and also the saturation. For the brightness tool, I wasn't really sure how to use it. I didn't know the first circle was for lighter tones and the last circle was for dark tones, but honestly the two in between I have no idea what they do. And for the temperature and the saturation tool, just one slider, really basic, really simple. Okay, last but not the least, this was another part which I struggled immensely with, and that is doing the audio. When I was doing the audio and adjusting the audio levels, I was still making slight changes to my video clips. It affected a lot of stuff. I think it makes sense like if I trim the audio clip to the length of my video clip and I shorten the video clip, obviously the audio will push the other audio clips forward, if that makes sense. And that would just ruin the whole syncing of the music already. One tip is to picture lock before you carry on with the audio. And also they have this thing where they will help you key down the music when there's talking. During the voiceover sections, I couldn't figure out why the audio was so low until I fumbled around with the settings on top and I found out that you could actually key down the music when there's a talking segment. I think that's a pretty useful function because usually on Premiere Pro I would have to do that manually. But if I wanted to manually adjust the levels of the clip and make it go from soft to loud, I would cut the audio clip and then adjust it accordingly. After that, I just exported my video and it was the end of my iMovie editing experience. I don't hate iMovie, honestly. Obviously, it's free if you own a MacBook. Not everyone has the privilege to be having expensive editing software, so I think iMovie is great. It's just really basic editing software, and of course, if you are a beginner, it's great for editing. If you're looking at editing more professionally or trying to up your editing game, I don't think this is the editing software to stay with. I think after you get the basics, you could probably invest in Final Cut Pro, which I know a lot of YouTubers use. And that's it for today's video, and I hope you all learned something from it, even though I've just been complaining about the text function for way too long. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!